Okay, so hello everyone, good evening, and thank you all for joining us today. It's really always energizing to see our L&D Tribe community show up with such passion for learning and development. As we continue our listening to the expert series, today's session promises to be a hands-on and insightful experience, especially for those of us who believe in the power of experiential learning. We are so delighted to welcome Jamie Thompson, the Managing Director of MTA Learning, to the L&D Tribe for the first time. Jamie brings years of experience in designing and delivering impactful learning tools that have helped facilitators around the world create engaging, practical, and meaningful development experiences. In today's session, Jamie will take us through the world of MTA learning tools, explore their various use cases, and show and share how you can apply them in your own learning environments, including guidance on becoming certified in using these tools. Before we dive in, a few quick reminders. All participants will be on mute to ensure a smooth experience. The session is being recorded and will be shared upon request. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat or raise your hand and we will have your questions toward the end. Now, without any further ado, it's my pleasure to hand it over to you, Jimmy. Jimmy, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, and thank you, Tribe, for inviting me to speak to you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and meet new people, and of course catch up with old friends as well. So welcome everybody, and I really hope you find the next 45 minutes useful. So over the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to help you understand how you can unleash the power of the MTA method and experiential learning as well. And I'll be arguing that in the current climate, experiential learning is more important than ever. So it's great to hear from some of you at the beginning that you're already passionate about experiential learning. Because one of the trends I've observed over the last few years is the movement towards bite-sized learning. So when we design training, we might say that the 5 secrets of handling a difficult conversation or 5 tips for experiential learning. We say, if this happens, do this. It's very restricted in a similar way to the way we might train a lab rat. And for me, in the world of AI, where answers to complex questions are now just available at your fingertips, I think the value of learning, of knowledge transfer, is decreasing. And so, as I make the case that experiential learning is more important than ever, I'll take you through the MTA method and give you some tips as well. So hopefully it won't just be a sales pitch. Hopefully you'll get some real value from it as well. So I'm using material and experience which I've gained in my experience of running training courses over 35 different countries, and presentations I've done at ATD in America, in Taiwan, in Dubai, Saudi Arabia, and all the many corporations I've worked with throughout the world. So I'm using this word experientially. So what is experiential learning? So just to kick us off, if you've got a view on what experiential learning is, I'd love to know. So maybe if anybody's brave enough, you can just write it in the chat. When I say experiential learning, what do I mean? What comes to mind? Because it'll be great just to start off with a common definition. So yeah, what do I mean? I'll drink a sip of tea while you're having a think. Oh, and I'll just let Mo Ash in as well. I know Mo. Always let in. So, what is experiential learning? You're shy. Oh, hang on. I do have a message there. Let me. Oh, 3 new messages. Right. Thank you, Ahmed. First, the process of learning through direct experience. Yeah, lovely. Experiential learning is a process where learning happens through direct experience and reflection. Learning by doing. The Kolb learning cycle. Absolutely. So the Kolb learning cycle, Kolb is the most famous professor of experiential learning. So yeah, absolutely. We're all kind of there. So for me, experiential learning is about developing understanding and skills actually through reflection on personal experience. So what does that mean? We need to create really powerful experiences that give people a chance to reflect. And that's really the fundamental base of what happens when we run MTA. Happens happens through learning by doing. Yeah, thank you, Rather. That's exactly right. So, just to get a bit more of your input, I'd love to know how confident do we all feel at the moment delivering experiential learning? So, what level would you be confident doing this learning through doing by? So, getting people to play and engage in activity. What level would you be happy doing that? Just as an icebreaker, or maybe it's a graduate level, or middle management, or C-suite? Let's see what we get. Right, I'll give you a couple more seconds. So it looks like middle management is winning at the moment. Now, a couple more for icebreakers. Ah, can I choose all? Well, you can, Oh, I don't think you can choose all, but I guess if you choose the top one, so if you choose C-suite, it kind of means you'd be happy doing it for middle management, grad development, and icebreaker, Ahmad. So perhaps so yeah, that's how I kind of see that one. Super. So let me share those. Ooh, we've got more people coming along. Let me share the thank you, Mohammed. You share the results. So that's interesting, isn't it? So most of us are happy, using experiential learning at middle management. But what I hope is that after I've given you a few tips and talked to you about the power of experiential learning, and maybe talked to you about some of the tools you could use, everybody would be happy using experiential learning in the C-suite because it's such a powerful tool. And often it's the most senior people that really benefit from discussing and talking and thinking and experiencing. So that will be my aim tonight. It's great to see most of you kind of at that middle management level, but let's see if we can take it a bit further. So let's move on. So I've talked about a little bit. I've mentioned the MTA methods, or what is the MTA method? At the very beginning, my friend Mohammed from Egypt Vodafone, he mentioned he'd use the MTA Insights kit. And for those of you that are not familiar with the MTA Insights kit, it's this kit here. And it's a super flexible kit. It comes with 53 different activities, and it really enables you to use experiential learning at all levels in your organization. So that's what I talk about when I use the MTA method, and we'll explore it more. But it will help as well if I just tell you a little bit about how the approach evolved. And so it all started back in 1986 when I was about 4 years old, and my dad was a Cambridge psychologist. And he was running 2-week programs, and they were so boring. He was showing people, I'm sure you're all too young on this call to know what they are on this thing is on the screen, but he was showing people these overhead projectors and giving them lots of knowledge, but it wasn't helping them learn. And so one Christmas, I got a toy like this for my presents. And my dad saw me playing with it, and he saw me leading, and he saw me sharing, and he saw me communicating better. And he realized that if he took my toy, I might be sad, but if he took my toy to work, he could start developing people using the Kolb experiential methodology. And so over the years, he professionalized it, and he got to a stage where it was used all around the world. And so then, in about 2007, he wanted to retire, and so I bought MTA from him. And so now I spend my time building on his legacy. I go around the world helping people like you use experiential learning to make the most of their people. But it's just nice to reflect on where it came from. It came through play, and that's why this methodology is so fantastic, because people love to play, they relax, and they start to develop all those skills, which are so important in the workplace. And so now at MTA, we give you as facilitators the option to develop over 400 different outcomes. So, for example, in the MTA Insights kit, which Mohammed from Vodafone has got, you've got 120 different discussion topics. You might have the team kit, which has 16 activities, great for team building, or you might need to do more specialist. Like you might need to do lead processing. So you could look at candidates who have different kits for different applications. And I'd just like to reflect back for a second on the objectives for today and how that relates to experiential learning. So when Mohammed introduced me, he kind of touched on these objectives. um, which is interesting because these objectives are about knowledge transfer. And so for me as an experiential learning practitioner, I find it quite difficult to work to written objectives because I'm more interested in developing your minds and getting you to think. So yes, we'll cover that. But actually, for me, that's not the most important part of today because I want to make this a bit more experiential, a bit more thoughtful. So for me, a great outcome of this session would be to leave you thinking, to leave you in a state of reflection, trying to sort out discrepancies, make sense of complexities, but compelled to take action. Because for me, that's a fantastic outcome of an experiential session. I want my participants not filled with knowledge, but filled with passion and filled with energy and filled with enthusiasm and ready to do something different, whatever that different thing may be, whether it's to try different behavior at work or whether it's to try something different in their lives. But to do that, we need fantastic activities. And so as a baseline, I'd just love to get your sense on what you think of the Marshmallow Challenge. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this challenge. So this is the challenge where you give your groups marshmallows and you get them to make the very tallest tower that they can. I think it's one of the world's most famous experiential activities. It's certainly the one which I see in my Google search results kind of posted the most. So just give me your thoughts on the marshmallow. It's interesting. A few people have never heard of it. Wow, that's okay. Oh, right. We've got a little bit longer to answer that one. Right, so 17 people have answered it. Right, last chance, and I'm going to close the poll. And then let's have a look at the results. Share the results. Thank you, Mohammed. You're doing a great job there. So, in terms of these results, what have we got? 17% of people love it. It's okay, better than nothing. Oh, would never use it. That's interesting. I mean, yeah, what do I think? I might use it if I had to. And some people have never heard of it. Well, if you've never heard of it, definitely Google it after the call, because it's a good. I think for me, it's a good standby activity. So what do I think? I think it's the right idea. So superficially, it's the right idea. We're giving people activity. We're giving them a chance to engage in a social process. We're giving them something to reflect on. But it could be better. And I'd like to explore why it could be better. And then we can start to think about how that might relate to MTA and how that might relate to designing really powerful experiential activities. So if we just think about what's going on in the Marshmallow Challenge, and just to recap the brief, we give people a pack of spaghetti, we give them some marshmallows, and we tell them they need to build the tallest tower that they can. So it's a very simple brief, but there's lots of building required. You get sticky fingers. You have to think about how to build triangles. You have to think about the best way to connect all your spaghetti together. There's lots of interaction with the parts. So for me, the Marshmallow Challenge, the task is huge. The actual interaction with the spaghetti and marshmallows becomes the activity. And the actual bit that we're interested in as facilitators, the process, is very small. There's a little bit of discussion, there's a little bit of leadership, there's a little bit of decision making, but there's not much. There's not really enough to use it in the C-suite. There's not really enough to use it in middle management. There's just about enough to use it with graduates. So we need to do better. As facilitators, we need more powerful activities in our army. Oh, and Moash. Right, no, that's great. So Moash says, one of the most highly overrated activities that paid off any substance, no impact whatsoever, no rigorous action produced. Yeah, thank you for your insight, Mo. Absolutely, I'm on your side on that one. So, how is MTA different? Because at MTA, I think we give people an opportunity to engage and interesting social processes. So if we think about an activity with the MTA Insights kit, participants here are threading components onto a rope, but they are having to thread them in a certain configuration, which is cognitively quite challenging. And there are multiple cognitive challenges to explore along the road. And by doing that, we can maybe get 30 minutes of activity. It's completely inconsequential, and no one's going to get sticky fingers. But in terms of activity design, if we compare it to the Marshmallow Challenge and what's going on in the activity, the process is huge. So the task is seemingly quite simple. So we just have a very small amount of, oh, sorry, I'm failing to use my pen on Zoom. We just have a small amount of tasks. So we're just threading components onto the rope, but there's a lot going on in our brains. There's a lot going on in the way we need to interact with each other. So as facilitators, we have a really, really big process to work with afterwards. And from that big process, we can do what Mo's talking about. We can produce very rigorous actions for moving forward. And so for me, when I'm looking at a good quality experiential activity, I'm wondering how much is happening in terms of the social processes, how much are people having to think, or actually are people just having to do lots of activity like the Marshmallow Challenge? And if they're doing too much activity, I get very, very nervous. So let's think then. So we've done an activity, and then the next stage of really good experiential learning in the Kolb cycle is getting people to reflect. It's getting people to make sense of the activity. And so how might we do that, and what could be the best way to do that? So I'll just pitch some questions to you, and you tell me about these questions. So I'd just love to get your thoughts on on your favorite review question. It might just give you some ideas about how to help people reflect on activities going forward. So I think we need to poll up, Mohammed, if that's okay. Yeah, there we go. So here we go. Thank you, Mohammed. You did a great job driving for me. Thank you. So yeah, if we were to do something like that activity where we thread the components onto the rope, it's cognitively quite challenging. There's lots of different things happening in the group. There might be conflict. There might be decision making. There might be questioning. There might be aligning. How could we start to go and review that activity? Right, so we've got 11 people answered so far. So be brave, it's anonymous. We don't know whose answers. Right, your last 10 seconds. So let's have a think about this. Oh, right, there's a still a flurry. Right, yes, thank you. Let's share those results. Thank you, Mohammed. Interesting. So we have in top position what behaviors enabled your team to complete the task. How did that go? What should you continue doing is quite low, 6%. What could you do differently next time? Or should the people went for that one? And what did you learn? So for me, my favorite question is the question you went for. What behaviors enabled your team to complete the task? And I like that because it's so broad. It captures the essence of experiential learning, of giving people scope to think broadly, but it's also the right question at the right time. So often in the experiential learning, we ask people what they learned, and it's too early to ask questions like that. We need to give people a chance to think, what could you do differently next time? Again, for me, it's a very common question that participants ask, but it's a bit too early. So for me, those broad questions at the beginning really give your participants a chance to think and really give them a chance to apply their own thinking to the activities. So yeah, that would be my favorite task. And so my first question for you to think about and ponder on and reflect on is, are your review questions open, really open, and process focused? And by that I mean, are you getting people to think about the social processes within the groups, or are you getting to think about the tasks? So we want to avoid any talk of marshmallows. We want to avoid any talk of necklaces. Are you getting people to think broadly and about all interesting social processes are happening? Because of course, if we ask something like that, then we can get this wonderful feedback from participants, so we can get them to think very broadly about what's happened. So in the past, participants have said things like this to me. And how broad is that compared to some of the answers we might get if we just, for example, ask them what they learned? So we need to get people to make sense of the activity. And so what might that look like in terms of achievements, in terms of rigor? We might get, what might we have achieved? Well, we've already started to get all our participants to articulate and practice the fundamentals of team working just in a short activity. And we started to get them to reflect deeply. And for me, reflection is a really core skill that people need going forward. But we've also introduced a thoughtful, participant-centric style of learning, which for me, again, is so different from just telling people things. But we need to take people on that journey. We need to help them learn about answering questions and about participating in experiential learning. And we've also developed a common language, because so often people wouldn't even recognize the skills and behaviors that are within a team. And we can move towards that deeper level of learning. And by a deeper level of learning, I mean getting people to think about values, about traits, about motivation, about building self-confidence, all the things that may be missed in normal training. So how might that be used? Well, this is a quick case study from Qatar Airways. So this was delivered in-house, but equally, if you're freelancers, you can use the kits and you can take them in-house. But Qatar Airways wanted to help their frontline leaders become better at managing the people in their call centers, and just telling them about leadership wasn't working. So what they were able to do was use an MTA Insights kit. They were able to set up a leadership activity which gave their frontline leaders a chance to learn and a chance to test their leadership skills in a very safe environment. And then using all the powerful reflection processes that come with MTA, help their leaders become better. And what they really liked was that they didn't just learn how to lead, but actually there's a change in mindset about how they coached, about how they led, how they discussed. And because the learning was very much their learning, they've been given a chance to explore their own learning. The learning was more relevant to the needs of the business because it was closer to what the people on the front line really wanted. So if we go back to where we could be in a journey with MTA, we could now have got this lovely self of key skills and attitudes and approaches that enable us to work effectively on a similar task. But then what we need to do as facilitators, and this is different from normal learning, we need to give up control. We need to ask our participants and get them to focus on how they can improve their individual or team performance. So we might get them to focus on a couple of areas where they can work, which again is maybe a contrast with normal learning, because so often in normal learning, we have this idea, this myth that the business should define the learning objectives because the business knows better. But actually in game-based learning, experiential learning, there's really solid research that suggests when we hand over responsibility to participants and get them to define their own learning pathways, we get much better outcomes. So my next reflection for you is participants will believe their own data. If you give participants enough freedom to make their own decisions about what they're learning, about how to learn it, they will be more effective. But can you give up control as a facilitator? Are you prepared to do that? And if you do, will your learners embrace freedom? And not everybody does. So again, it can be a journey to take participants on and help them understand the value of taking personal responsibility for their learning pathways. And this is a lovely quote from one of the academics I respect most in the field of experiential learning, a guy called Bill Crowell. Do look him up. And he talks about this, and he says, in a fine flouting, one of the key principles of development, that people generally know what they need to work on, actually want to improve. We have now caged and corralled people's learning into predefined pathways. And so that's what, for me, is happening in so much of learning. So actually, can we break out of that and give people a little bit more freedom? So where have we got to? We've done a simple activity. But actually, the great thing about experiential learning is it can be used for really complex activities too. So what I might do after I've done an activity like necklace to get people thinking about all the behaviors, I might take them to a more complex activity, so maybe from the MTA team kit, and I might introduce further complexity. So we might have activities with stakeholders, with different customers, or with competing priorities, with perhaps different subtasks and different leadership roles. So we might really start introducing more complex VUCA type scenarios you might see in the workplace. And again, once we start to do that, then experiential learning becomes so much more relevant, and we can start to use it at those higher levels where I think it's even more valuable. But if we do an activity like that, then there's a question about how we review it and how we develop learning from it. And so one of the questions I hear a lot is this question. So after an activity, people say, well, should you stop, start, or continue? And I just wonder what people think of that question. I just wonder what people think of that question. You just ponder, or you can put any thoughts in chat, but I wonder what people think of that question. And I'll just have another sip of tea. So for me, it's a fine question. It's an okay question. But if we are really going to take experiential learning to the next level, I think we need to do a lot more than that, particularly on the more complex activities. So in the MTA system, we encourage people to do some individual thinking. So when you get the MTA system, every activity comes with reflection materials where individuals can go and crystallize their own thinking about an activity and make sense of what happened. We then encourage these opening questions, these broad questions that you all liked when I got you to evaluate the questions earlier. And then we have exploratory questions and then the closing questions. So as coaches, if any of you are coaches, you'll be familiar with this kind of process. But really, it's about untangling what happened, making sense of complexity, exploring it, and then closing it. And if you can do that, then you're really starting to deliver powerful experiential learning. And by deeper questions, I mean actually digging into the very specifics of how a team is performing. So you might be asking questions about planning. How did your planning, when was your planning? What kind of plans were agreed? What was the different roles within the team? What are the communications like? So really digging into the facets of a high performing team. And for me, one of the key things that perhaps is missing from something like the Marshmallow Challenge as well is there's no link with theory. So in the MTA method, and you could do this with any experiential system, you can start to really link it in to solid theory. So I'm reviewing something like the bridge activity I was just talking about. I'd ask questions that relate to Hawkins' model of team development. So the first questions might be around commissioning. Do we have a clear plan? Did we then align within the team? What were our interpersonal skills like? And did we keep applying our learning, and how are we connecting? So actually, when we do activities, are our activities complex enough to introduce really robust theory? So to tie that up, reflection 3, how well do your experiential activities that you're running now link to really robust theory? Is it situational leadership? Is it Hawkins? Is it Salas? Who is it you're linking to, and how are you linking, and how are you making sure activities are good enough to enable you to do them? So in terms of how we might do that at MTA, this is just a very quick case study from Aramco. So they're having a project kickoff. And so we use the over the bridge activity, and it enabled them to assess their current performance, agree ways of working, so they self-articulated contracts, and hard to attribute this to the kickoff we did, but the project was delivered on time and to budget. And so if you have these complex activities with these sophisticated review processes, then you can start to make a real impact. And I think what you can do is you can really start to operationalize a deeper level of thinking. So the psychologist here will be very familiar with this diagram, but so often in training, we are just thinking about single loop learning. So we teach people a technique, we check they get a good result. Actually, in experiential learning, we can go much deeper. We think about why we do things, and we can tap into motives and traits and values. And that can really help us understand, for example, how we might need to work together better on a project team. And what that means is that if we really dig deep, we can start to overcome some of this cognitive dissonance we get in learning. So our attitudes drive our emotions, which drive our behaviors. But how often in training do we touch on emotions and attitudes? And complex enough to start to create the same emotions we do in the workplace, then perhaps we're not really going to make a big impact. And we're going to have this kind of cognitive dissonance between the behaviors we're being asked to demonstrate and perhaps some of our underlying emotions and attitudes that also need to be explored. So I think with really good experiential activities like the MTA system, what you can do is you can dig deep. So my question for you would be, are you digging deep enough in your learning? And secondly, is there alignment between your work environment and your people and the activities you're choosing? So back to Marash's point, if we're working with C-suite people, we can't use a marshmallow challenge, although people do. So we need to have complexity, and that's where a pre-designed kit can really help. So we just think about the case study. This was Nissan, and they've been using all our tools for years and years, integrated into many of their programs. For example, lean processing, team working, problem solving, conflict, even for assessment. And the result for them, it's hard to measure, but they love the system because they always have a powerful activity on the shelf that they can bring their content to life with. So just in terms of how that might look for you guys, this is our most popular kit. This is the MTA Insights kit. In that you get 53 activities. This is what my friend from Vodafone has, and super flexible, and you can use it in many different situations. The activities are about 10 minutes to 30 minutes, and some are 1 hour to 2 hours. And then there's the MTA team kit as well. And in that you get 16 activities that are really good for team development, thinking about the facets of a high performing team. And those are the two most popular. But if you want to as well, and this is a bit I really enjoy, this is when I get to meet you all. If you want to, you can come to Dubai or London or Washington, and you can come on my MTA certification program. And for me, the key aim of that is to develop confidence using the MTA system and develop your understanding of how the method works and really help you deliver next level experiential learning. You'll also learn more about process in teams, because I think that's a fundamental foundation of MTA, and we'll also spend time developing your facilitation skills too. And so at the end of it, you'll also go off and deliver those amazing MTA sessions. And so once you've done that, there's so much you can do. You might decide to develop inspirational leaders. You might decide to run an intervention to help a team perform better, or you might decide to work with a team that can't communicate well. But with that system, you'll have ultimate flexibility to do really whatever you want in terms of developing people. We'll also help you make the most of the MTA system. So this is just a system formalized, which I've been teaching about, but I'll talk you through that, and I'll help you learn how to use that so that, again, you can deliver high impact experiential learning that really gets results. And it's a bit strange for me presenting to people because I don't normally present to people. My sessions are very hands-on, very experiential, lots and lots of discussion. This is the last masterclass I ran in Dubai, and I think actually some members of your community are in the picture. I think we've got Ash there in the middle, maybe a couple of Ashes, as they came and they learned from me. And we're with you on the journey as well. So when you get certified, that's you build that relationship with me. I'm always here to support you. I'm often answering WhatsApps from all around the world about how to use experiential learning tools. We'll also promote you as well. So if you look on our LinkedIn page, we're always trying to promote people who've been using our tools, and we'll share your sessions as well. And you also get to use the MTA certified badge. You get to use it on LinkedIn, and you get to use it in your marketing collateral as well. So is it for you? Well, yes, I guess. If you're an L&D practitioner, I'm sure you'd love it. We have trainers, we have facilitators, we have lecturers, we have people flying in from all around the world, and we have a lovely 2 days together. Really get to know each other, do lots of activity, and leave you in a position where you're able to then go off and run brilliant experiential learning. So if you'd like to join me, the next session is the 15th and 16th of October at the Super Voca Hotel on Sheikh Zayed Road. The background behind me is a picture I took last time, and so you get a nice view when you're doing your training as well. So thank you everybody for listening. I hope I've just left you with a few key points to reflect on. But there's plenty of time for questions now, and to be honest, that's the most interesting part of the session. And by all means, turn your cameras on, and I'm very happy to answer anything, talk to you about anything, explain more about the kits. I have time, and I have an audience. So yeah, thank you, and thank you, Mohammed, for doing such a great job of driving throughout. It made my life much easier.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And thank you so much for sharing your really thought-provoking reflections. I really liked the five reflections that you shared with us. And to be honest, it's really interesting to see the power of experiential learning using MTI learning tools and how this transform the learning experience and create that kind of interactive learning environment. And we, as a learning and development professional, Jimmy, we often talk about creating engaging, impactful experience.
Yes.
Yes, and it's easier said than done. But actually, today's session just reminded us that experience itself can be the most powerful teacher.
Uh,
So thank you for reminding us with this.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed. And I think it's an interesting point because it is easy to create engagement and we can entertain people. I think the difficulty people have with experiential learning, it's not the experiential piece, it's the learning piece. And I think that's where the systems can help, and I think that's where the facilitation skills help. And I think that's where bearing in mind these principles about task and process and are the activities we are creating really rich process rather than amazing tasks. So, thank you. That's a nice observation. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, so I think now we will open the floor for some of the questions from the audience. If anyone would like to ask a question, whether to type your question in the chat or raise your hand to ask Jamie directly. Ahmed, okay, please go on.
Thanks so much, Jamie. It was a really interesting session, but I have a question. And actually, it is a confusing question in Egypt. From your perspective, what are the differences between experiential learning and game-based learning?
Oh,
Sure. So that's a great question. Thank you. So can I say gamification and experiential learning? Is that okay? Or is that
Okay, yes, experiential learning.
yeah,
Yes, there are a lot of concepts.
yeah, or game-based learning. So let's say game-based learning and gamification are the same. It's the same. So when I'm thinking about experiential learning, I'm thinking about an open-ended task that allows people to reflect on their own personal experience. Yeah, let's split it out. So let's talk about experiential learning, gamification, and game-based learning. So experiential learning for me is about giving very open-ended tasks that let people reflect on experience and draw their own conclusions about what happened. When I think about game-based learning, I might think about Monopoly, which is one of the world's first game-based activities. It was invented in 1896 by a socialist in Manchester, and they wanted to prove that in a capitalist society, money always um, focused on one person. And so you roll the dice, and same thing happens every time. The money ends up with one person. And so there's some very strict rules in there that mean we are learning, participants are learning what we want them to learn. So game-based for me is far more structured. It's still a form of experience, maybe a subset of experiential learning, but it's very structured. It has lots of rules, lots of processes. There's far less personal freedom. So it's more about learning something rather than necessarily learning about ourselves. Of course, you learn a bit about yourself when you're doing it. But that's if then in gamification, what we're doing is we are rewarding people for doing certain things. So rewarding people with things like leaderboards or points. And for me, I don't really think gamification and experiential learning are compatible because I think experiential learning should be engaging enough in itself that we don't need leaderboards, we don't need badges, we don't need gold stars, we don't need praise from the teacher. So I like to keep them separate. And I think if you do need gamification in experiential learning, you're probably not doing your experiential learning right. Gamification is amazing for really dry subjects like compliance or regulatory, or my daughter who's trying to learn French and needs to kind of get that 90-day streak to continue. So I think that's the difference. Does that answer your question, Ahmed? Super. Thank you. Thank you.
oh,
Uh,
Okay, I think we have Ahmed. Ahmed, please go on.
Oh, was it Mohammed? Mohammed from
Mohammed,
Vodafone.
sorry. Mohammed,
No,
تفضل.
no problem.
Thanks, Mamdouh. Thank you, Jamie, for this amazing session. I would like to ask you regarding to MTA Insight Kit. I know it's designed for around 53 activities. My question is it possible after practice and after applying all the activities to have a different activity or to create a different activity more than 53, taking in consideration to be the same result? So is it be to apply around 60, 70, maybe 80 activities with the same kit or not? Or we should
Yeah.
stick to these activities?
So we say nation, Mohammed. So yeah, you can choose to keep going, and there must be an infinite number of combinations. But actually, what we find is that really there's so much in MT Insights. We haven't really ever come across people who've needed to develop their own activities. It's about 80 hours of content. It's 210 discussion topics. So actually, by the time you've covered all that, everybody has probably had enough of MTA in your organization, to be honest. So yeah, of course, you can develop them, limited by your imagination. I would hope there's so much in the kit that actually it'll be a long time before you need to do that. But yes, of course, you can develop your own, particularly once you've got some ideas and see what works well.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we have one question in the chat. We will take it and then we will go for Muhammad Gamal. We have a question here in the chat from Muhammad Al Khalid. His question is, what will be the best methods to convince the CEOs to include their or this? I can't read the rest of the question, Muhammad. So please,
No,
can you say it, please?
Maybe that's all it is. Is that just it? What would be the best method to include this?
Yes, exactly. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, so
convince the CEOs about the methodology in the classroom training programs to be integrated with them, I believe. Yes.
Yeah. So it's a bit chicken and egg, really, because for me, the very best method of convincing the CEOs is to actually do some activity with them. And if you do some activity with them, they will feel the power of it, and they will experience it, and they might get some very valuable learning from it. So I say, right, let's 30 minutes, let's do an activity, let's generate some learning. Now let's compare this to what might normally happen in a session. And for me, when a senior leadership team is arguing and fighting and not listening to each other, and all the same issues are happening which happen in the workplace, and stop them making progress in the workplace, and then when we as traders and facilitators can help them and help them make their days less stressful and better and more effective, then it's sold. They love the method, because let's face it, senior management team love talking, they love discussing, they don't want to be listening to a boring PowerPoint. So that's what I would always do if you can.
Hope that answered your question, Muhammad.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll try to contact Jamie later myself, if you don't mind.
Of course, and but do connect with me on LinkedIn. Send me a WhatsApp. Like, I'm very community focused. So,
yeah, interested. Sure.
And also building on this, Jamie, it would be we will highly appreciate if you can share with us your LinkedIn profile in the chat and your website or email, just to make it easy to get in touch with you.
Of course. Yeah, maybe while I'm doing this, I can type in my email, but maybe someone can just drop my LinkedIn profile in while I'm answering more questions. Do we have more questions? So Landlord's Game was one of the first that taught the audience about the hardships of capitalism. Yeah, that's exactly right, Mo. Yeah.
Okay, so
good. Yeah. Oh, Salma, does Salma have a question too?
So we have, yes, two more questions from Muhammad Gamal. Excuse me, Salma. I will take the question of Muhammad and then come back to you, if you don't mind. Okay. Muhammad Gamal, please go on. Ask your question.
Okay. Actually, he answered already one of my two questions. how to convince the people in the classroom itself. That's part of the question. But my major question is how to convince the senior managers to invest on this. That's the core point, especially when they are telling it to us what are the key differences or what will be the key impact comparing to the traditional training or the old school when we apply such new methodology. That's the key point if really we are willing to proceed with such a great activity. That's only my question.
Yeah, sure. So I think maybe we start with the problem, and what do many organizations face as a problem? It's not the process, it's the people, and it's the team working, it's the leadership, it's the communication. So maybe we start by getting the senior management to articulate that, and then it's a question of, well, how do we solve it? We know that lecturing doesn't work. There's an amazing statistic. When I was sat in the psychology lecture about 6 or 7 years ago, a lecturer, after 90 minutes, without a hint of irony, after 20 minutes, people only retain 5% of content. So there's a lot of evidence that traditional learning doesn't work. It doesn't make an impact. So I think you can present that. I think the ROI is coming up in the chat, and absolutely, that's good. It's hard to measure ROI, honestly. It's a really hard thing to do accurately. We've done it in some of our studies. So for me, it's about management. It's about getting them to do activity and getting them to appreciate the power and feel what it's like. It's maybe about collecting feedback. It's maybe about looking at case studies. But I've never, ever met anybody, even senior managers, who would prefer to do traditional training rather than experiential learning. So I think as soon as you can get them to do it, they'll understand it. And so for me, that's maybe the key challenge, is how you get them to do it. So maybe it's just, half an hour on a Friday afternoon or something. But I think as soon as you can get them to do it, it's solved. That's probably your key challenge.
We wish we have more of them, please, Jamie, who don't want to have this kind of traditional training. We hope to have so many of them.
Exactly. But it's,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so taking our last question from Salma. Salma, please go on.
Okay. So first, thank you so much for the session. My question would be, what do you usually do when learners get stuck during a task or process? I facilitate different activities using different tools, but sometimes participants struggle to move forward. Do you prefer to step in, guide them, or do you just let them work through the challenge, even though it will take more time and effort?
A great question. So how do I intervene when participants are stuck? Salma, are you brave enough to give me your thoughts on that first, or should I give my answer? What do you normally do? What's your thoughts?
Okay, so what I do is just like I let them stuck for time.
Yep.
And then when they insist to asking for help, I just like step in and help.
Right. Okay. And what do you help them with?
Simple guidance, not the answer, not the complete know-how of the steps, but just like with we can say the provoking questions.
Yes, absolutely. So look, it's a lovely question, thank you. And it's a really common concern. So if we go back and we start to think what's happening in an experiential activity, there are two elements. There's the process, there's all the social processes, the cognitive processes, verbal processes, and then the actual task, which is like making something, doing something. And so what some facilitators are often tempted to do when participants get stuck is to give a little hint with the task. So maybe in your marshmallow towers, maybe you could just use triangles, a little hint like that. But actually, that's never the problem. In good experiential activities, the problem is always that the group process has broken and the group process has fallen down. So what we do is we ask questions, and first of all, we can just stop the group, and we create an environment where they can fix their process. So a great way is to say, stop, 2 minutes, nobody do any task at all. So no one's touching anything, no one's building anything with the marshmallows or spaghetti, because if we stop them doing the task, then all their brain power has to be occupied on the process. And that's the process we want them to learn about, and it's the process we want them to fix. If that doesn't work, we can then start coaching on the process. So just stop a second. Tell me, what's your objective? Okay, it sounds like you've all got different objectives. That's interesting. What do we need to do first? So for me, it's to your point, it's about those great questions that get people to think about the process and get them to fix their own process rather than helping them with the task. And I think if you can do that, you can get groups at the end of any activity and they can still feel they did it themselves, which I think for me is really important in terms of building confidence and owning that success.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, Selma, for the question, and thanks for your honesty.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
Great. Okay, so we reached the end of this session.
well, if there's time, I think there's one more question.
Yes. So we have another question from Muhammad in the chat. Is there a specific learning path or it's a separate individual topics as per needs?
Right. So it's both. It's both. So you get lots of different activities, and we have ideas on how to sequence them. So you might, for example, you could use this kit to do a day on communication, or you could use this kit to do a day on team building. But also, you might choose to just drop it into your own program. So, for example, you might be doing something on leadership. You might have 3 days. You might be doing something on situational leadership. And you might think, right, I just want to replace that section on situational leadership with one of Jamie's MTA leadership activities. And you can drop it in as per your need. So great question. And the answer is both. So thank you for that one.
Great. So I think we don't have any more questions. So as we used to do in every session with listening to the expert, we used to have a group photo with the subject matter expert who is joining us, Jamie. So if you don't mind to take a group photo with all the group, I would just ask you, Jamie, to stop sharing the screen.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
You.
And please, for those who can open their cams, that will be good. If you can't, it's okay, no problem. So let's wait for a few seconds to give you an opportunity to open your cam.
Right.
To
I'm
take
having problems because I've lost my cursor. Right. Are you able to cancel my screen share?
let
Let me
check.
see. This is challenging.
No problem. I can minimize the screen of the presentation that show the slides and then
Have no.
make the people much more visible on the screen. So
Oh, my
yeah.
cursor, it's reappeared. I have a cursor again.
Oh,
Amazing.
perfect.
There we go. Right.
Okay.
There we
So
go.
let me count to 3 and then take the photo. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Amazing. Thank you so much, Jamie, for such an engaging and insightful session. You're
No
really,
problem.
your expertise and the practical demonstration of really MTA tools have certainly sparked a lot of interest and inspiration within our community. We truly appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us today.
No problem. We have one more question too. Do we get a
Really?
special L&D Tribe Group discount? So yeah, absolutely. So you can have 10% discount on the kit. So you can have a 10% discount on the workshop. It's not available online. It's secret. So you'll just have to send me an email, and I will just use the password Tribe, and I will make sure you get a discount. So I hope that helps. I hope to see some of you in Dubai.
Great. And guys, you have the email and the LinkedIn profile for Jimmy if you need to contact him and know more details about the next course and the next cohort. Thank you so much for everyone who joined us today. Thank you for active participation and questions. It's always a pleasure to see the L&D tribe come together with such energy and curiosity. Have a good day and see you next session.
Nice to meet you all. Thank you very
See you.
much.
Thank Jimmy. Bye-bye.
See you.